Hi guys. Firstly, a massive thank you to you all for making my videos on the Shankill Butchers so successful, especially part 1. It took so much work and I was genuinely touched by all the lovely comments. I'll combine parts 1 and 2 at some point soon and upload the whole thing, just so it's there on the channel for the future. As to this video, I'd already begun writing this script when Dr. Meme recommended it, so shout out to you, great minds think alike. This is a recent case which has been in the news about the murder of a schoolboy by a fellow pupil, which is truly sickening. But what's even worse, and I don't think it's been covered enough, is that this was a totally avoidable tragedy, and there are a litany of serious failings made by the authorities. This one is guaranteed to make you angry. Anyway, on with the video. The morning of the 3rd of February 2025, Caroline Willgoose said goodbye to her 15-year-old son Harvey as he left the house, not realising that she would never see him alive again. Harvey was a pupil at All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield in the UK, but he hadn't attended for some time, partly because he was worried about other pupils carrying knives and being attacked by them, and his fear would tragically be realised just a few hours later. He'd recently fallen out with a friend of his called Mohammed Khan, who was also just 15 years old. Whilst Harvey thought they'd resolved their differences, Khan had other ideas. Harvey didn't know, but his so-called friend was a disturbed and dangerous young man who had developed a fixation with weapons, and on this day was armed with a hunting knife, and he was just waiting for an opportunity to use it. Just 3 hours after the school day began, Khan would plunge the knife into Harvey's heart, killing him right in front of other horrified pupils. Welcome to Evil Among Us. With this case, from the start, I'll interweave what I believe to be shocking failings on the part of the authorities, which I think have been swept under the carpet or simply ignored, but which clearly indicate this murder could have and should have been easily avoided. So with regards to the killer in this case, Mohammed Khan was born on the 11th of November 2009 in Sheffield, a city in the north of England, and was raised in this area along with his 2 younger siblings. As I always do when information is available, I'll tell you about Khan's background, not to excuse what he went on to do. Trust me, I'll be as brutal in my analysis of him as I usually am, but it's important to understand the environment which produced this child who was a killer by the age of just 15 years old. So it seems that Khan came from a household of neglect and abuse. His father would often be in Pakistan and spent almost no time with the family. When he did come back, he would beat all of the children for minor indiscretions. Khan's mother, she had serious mental health issues, with him later describing that she would, quote, just stand there and stare into nothing. She would also sometimes run the hot tap and then place her hands in the scalding water. All the children were also badly neglected, as we'll return to later. Likely as a form of escape, but quickly as a way to make himself feel powerful, Mohammed Khan became obsessed with weapons and violence, and beginning from around the age of 13 years old, he was buying weapons online, including hunting knives, a machete and a hammer. Khan would pose with these weapons in pathetic pictures, which the police later recovered, with many of them taken in early 2024, almost a year before the murder. Khan's online obsession with violence paralleled how he was behaving in the real world. He was a violent and disruptive thug in school, and around July 2024, he'd been kicked out of one school for assaulting a pupil, and had been moved to All Saints Catholic High School as a final attempt to keep him in mainstream education. He only attended for a week before the summer holidays, and returned to the school in September 2024. The first friend he made at this point was Harvey Willgoose, the child he would murder just 5 months later. I find it a bit strange that I cannot find any mention of Khan's previous school, but I fear there's been some attempt to obscure the fact that serious concerns about him had been repeatedly ignored, and that he should have, like years before, been at the very least in a pupil referral unit for children with behavioural difficulties, or potentially in a young offenders institution, as it's clear that Mohammed Khan did not go from a sweet, angelic child to a killer in just 5 months. It is known that before the murder, Khan was regularly taking knives into school, and this was likely known by his previous school, but as he moved, it was no longer their problem. What we do know with greater clarity is Khan's behaviour in the months before the murder, which highlights just how much of a little shit he was, as well as the complete negligence of the school in protecting the other pupils from this dangerous monster. So police later determined that in September 2024, Khan was continuing to indulge his obsession with weapons online, including using search terms such as zombie killer knife, dagger, pocket knife, and machete. He also continued to buy weapons, and he added an axe to his collection. Shockingly, it was later reported that in October 2024, a concerned parent had called All Saints Catholic High School to report that Khan had been showing off an axe as well as knives to other pupils. Despite this parent being given assurances that something would be done, nothing happened. Police themselves were able to see evidence of Khan taking weapons onto school premises as he filmed this. They also found other videos, including the one playing now. When or where this one was filmed is not clear, but it's apparent that this young thug fit the mould of so many of these goobers, weak, pathetic little boys who thought they looked cool and powerful holding weapons and showing them off in school, when in fact, no doubt, people were laughing at them behind their backs. I need to dispel something early on, as it will come up again later, and that is the issue of racial abuse. A lot of effort was made in court to try and portray Mohammed Khan as a poor little lamb, a child who had been bullied and just snapped. This is bollocks. To be clear, I'm not saying that at some point during his life, Khan wasn't bullied because of his ethnicity, but it's abundantly clear to me that he was, by the time of this crime, the bully, the piece of shit kid who had no respect for anyone or anything. In addition, Khan had to wear a catheter due to a kidney issue, which again, likely did lead to teasing, but I reached the same conclusion. Whatever mockery he was subjected to was no excuse for what he went on to do. They say a picture paints 1,000 words. I think this photo of Khan says so much about how he wanted to be seen, with him sitting wearing his gaudy gold chain, hood up, flashing a knife to the camera. This is how Mohammed Khan wanted to be seen, as a roadman, when he was nothing more than a plastic gangster. This picture is chilling, as the weapon Khan is holding is the one that he would plunge into the chest of Harvey Willgoose, which by his own testimony he bought a few weeks before the murder, so this picture was taken not long before the crime. Continuing our timeline and reinforcing the perception of Mohammed Khan as a vile little brat, on the 25th November 2024, he was in a French lesson and was being disrespectful to the teacher, who then gave him detention. When he was told he'd have to stay behind after school, he threw his toys out of the pram, got up, walked over and pushed another child out of their chair who had nothing to do with anything and was just sat, working as a computer. Soon after this, Khan went ballistic towards another teacher when he was told to stop using his mobile phone in class. It's clear he was an individual who thought he could act in any way he wanted without consequence. There was at least one more incident of violent and aggressive behaviour displayed by Khan, no doubt replicating what he'd been like in his old school. He was also apparently bragging to other people that he was going to, quote, shank other people, i.e. stab them. In December 2024, two sets of professionals became involved with Mohammed Khan, and both utterly failed in my opinion, failing not only him, but also the family of Harvey Willgoose. So firstly, early this month, social services were involved, as they'd received a referral stating that all of the children, including Khan, were neglected. Who the referral was made by is not clear, but it included concerns that all of the children looked skinny and malnourished, and that they didn't own pyjamas and had no sheets on their beds. However, after a home visit, it was decided nothing was wrong, and the case was closed. Potentially, their involvement wouldn't have made any difference in this case, but there's a general theme of those in authority appearing to simply shrug their shoulders and move on, and this is epitomised by what happened next when South Yorkshire Police got involved, with them being the best chance to stop Mohammed Khan and save a family from essentially a life sentence. So soon after social services had been involved, Mohammed Khan's mother called the school and said that she'd found an axe in her son's school bag. It seems his call was made in early to mid-December 2024, but for some reason, it wasn't until the 27th of December that a police officer came to the family home and spoke to Khan. The axe was found and confiscated, and Khan was spoken to, but he simply shrugged his shoulders and denied everything. He said that he didn't know whose axe it was. He was not arrested, instead was given words of advice about the dangers of carrying weapons. Later, the decision to not arrest Mohammed Khan was defended by Detective Chief Inspector Andy Knowles of South Yorkshire Police, whose statement, I believe, is unbelievably woeful. He stated, quote, "There wasn't enough there to be able to arrest him and charge him with possession of a bladed article. It's not just possession, it's possession in a public place that is the critical factor. There isn't that evidence to show that he had it out publicly. Obviously, we can ask questions around it, and he denied having any knowledge of it. So in this instance, the safest thing to do was to give him that safety advice. Obviously, there's no information at the time suggesting that he had any desire to harm Harvey or anyone else for that matter. It was, as I say, hard to imagine that this would have occurred. Had circumstances been different, and there had been a clear indication to cause harm to somebody, then perhaps that might have led to different discussions, but in this case, there wasn't." He also said, somewhat flippantly in my opinion, quote, "Hindsight was a wonderful thing when reflecting on this case." Now, there are so many things wrong with these comments. Yes, it's true that Mohammed Khan could not be arrested because he was not found with the axe on him in a public place, but had the police acted sooner, then this likely would have happened. Specifically, it appears the call to the school was made during term time, so in early to mid-December, but a police officer didn't rock up until the 27th, after schools had closed. Maybe the school took ages to report it, maybe the police just didn't bother to action it, but had the police rushed to the school that day, they may have found Mohammed Khan with the axe, although this may have been taken away from him by his mother. But had they not found this particular weapon, I'm sure if they'd have searched him, they would have found him with one or more knives, and then he could have been arrested. But no, they waited weeks to speak to him. As to the bullshit statement of the fact they had no information to say that he posed a risk to anyone, dude was carrying a fucking axe. I mean, what do you think he was planning to do with it? Cut down some trees? And as to saying hindsight is a wonderful thing, this is something said by people who were indicating they could have had no way of predicting something. But had the police simply made inquiries with the school, learned about Mohammed Khan's violent behaviour up to that point, and added in a report about the axe, they would have seen that he posed an immediate risk to other pupils, and something should have been done. At the very least, this would have been the final straw. He would have been expelled and continued his education in a pupil referral unit, a specialist environment for children with behavioural difficulties, where classes are smaller and oversight is much more intense. But instead, at the beginning of the new school term, in January 2025, Mohammed Khan was allowed back to All Saints Catholic High School. Here, he would mingle with 1,300 other pupils, any of whom could have been his victim, and just 5 weeks after being spoken to by the police, he would plunge a knife into the chest of a 15-year-old schoolboy, ending his life and emotionally scarring dozens of pupils who saw the killing. Harvey Willgoose was born on the 29th of November 2009 in Sheffield, the beloved son of Caroline and Mark Willgoose. He was one of 3 children, with him having a sister called Sophie and a brother called Lewis. All of them were devastated by his death, which occurred when he was just 15 years old, in a place where he should have felt safe. Later, I'll play words from the family in tribute to Harvey, but it's safe to say that he was a bright, funny, energetic, and cheeky young man. After his death, tributes poured in from people recounting their pleasure in knowing Harvey. One pupil stated that Harvey was, quote, "a proper nice boy. Whenever you'd see him around school, he'd always have a smile on his face. He had such a bubbly personality." Caroline later stated, quote, "I want him to be remembered as the fun-loving kid, cheeky chappy, sociable kid that he was. He was just a joy. He was a million miles an hour. He was a happy chappy. Loved life. Loads of friends. Harvey loved football and was a devoted Sheffield United fan, a club that would pay tribute to him after his death. Harvey joined All Saints Catholic High School in Year 7, so when he was 11 years old, and initially he was a happy pupil. He was rarely in trouble for anything, he didn't associate with the wrong people, and he definitely didn't carry knives. His character was in stark contrast to the disgusting narrative that his killer tried to portray him as: Harvey the bully, Harvey the aggressor. In fact, when Mohammed Khan began at the school in September 2024, Harvey befriended him. He was Khan's first friend. Harvey simply wanted to help another pupil who was clearly feeling out of place and lost. I think there was a particular reason for this. Despite Harvey's outwardly chatty appearance, he was a troubled young man, and his attendance, just before his death, had fallen off a cliff due to underlying mental health issues. What specifically was distressing him has not been reported, but all indicators are that much of his anxiety was tragically due to his fear of the number of knives being brought into the school and him potentially being attacked. Harvey clearly did have reason to be fearful, as just a few days before he died, there was an incident which clearly frightened him and which also set into motion a sequence of events leading to a crime that would shock the nation. Specifically, on the 29th of January 2025, 5 days before the murder, staff at All Saints School had to break up a fight which had broken out between 3 boys, Mohammed Khan and 2 others who were called David and Adam. Khan would later claim that David had previously racially abused him and had threatened to stab him, and on that occasion had apparently been armed with a knife. Reports have subsequently appeared to indicate that Khan was much more the aggressor than he was willing to admit. Khan then went and told a teacher that David had a knife, and the school was put into lockdown. Police were called, but no weapon was found. David and Adam were both suspended, but Khan was not, but he didn't return to school for the next 2 days, apparently because he was afraid of being stabbed. Harvey texted his dad after hearing about this incident, stating, quote, "This is why I don't go to school, Dad, because children carry knives." Despite Harvey not even being present during this incident, he became involved in the aftermath. What happened was discussed on Snapchat over the weekend of the 1st and the 2nd of February 2025 in a group including both Harvey and Khan. Things became heated quickly. Khan was siding with his friend Adam, but Harvey was siding with David. This led to the pair arguing. This got to the point where both were kicked out of the group. Things seemed to simmer down, and on the 3rd of February 2025, the day of the murder, between 5:41am and 7:50am, Harvey reached out to Khan to check there was no bad blood between them. He wrote, quote, "Is it beef or what?" Khan replied, "Beef with who?" Harvey responded, Me and you." Khan said, "Nah, but if you want beef, we can have it. But you get me," before adding, "You was my first boy in school," referring to how Harvey was his first friend. But things weren't resolved. Mohammed Khan, the dangerous, unstable, weapon-obsessed piece of shit that he was, wanted revenge, and less than 5 hours after the last of these messages was sent, he would stab his so-called friend in the heart. This case is so tragic for so many reasons, including the fact that despite having been off for a number of weeks and clearly being scared of other pupils with knives, at around 7:30am on the 3rd of February 2025, Harvey Willgoose got up and, having built himself up, decided that he was determined to go to his classes. Caroline later recalled her last moments with her son. She stated, quote, "He went, 'I'm going to school, Mum. Are you proud of me?' I said, 'I am, love.' I followed him down and he said, 'I love you, Mum.' Shut the door behind me." Just a few hours later, Caroline's world, and those of his father, siblings, and everyone who loved him would be changed forever. Harvey likely believed that his conversation with Mohammed Khan earlier that morning had squashed any beef between them, but he couldn't have known that nearby, Khan was in his own home, making preparations for his day. Before he left, he looked up a prayer on the internet to keep himself safe before placing the razor-sharp hunting knife with a 6-inch serrated blade into his jacket pocket before heading into school. CCTV footage captured Khan entering the school at 8:33am, whilst Harvey was captured arriving at 8:57am. CCTV cameras captured the pair interacting in the corridor at 9:04am, and this piece of footage is really harrowing, knowing what we know now. In this footage, you can clearly see Khan pushing Harvey, who doesn't retaliate. In fact, he specifically places both hands behind his back, showing he's not a threat. He's not reacting in any way. However, look at Khan's hands, twitchy and hovering around the base of his jacket. What's happening here is that Mohammed Khan is goading Harvey. He wanted him to retaliate, then he could throw open his jacket, pull out the knife, and kill Harvey. I have no doubt that if Harvey had reacted in any way at this point, he would have been killed right there and then. The bait was not taken, but Khan was determined to use the knife and would continue to try and provoke Harvey. There were 2 further chances to stop Mohammed Khan. At around 9:15am, 10 minutes after the first interaction, he was asked to write a statement about what had occurred 5 days before on the 29th of January. Whilst doing this, he was asked by a teacher whether he was currently carrying a knife. Khan obviously said no, but there was no pushback. This 15-year-old, with a history of violent behaviour, who the school knew had been found with an axe in his bag, simply took his word for it. It needs to be pointed out here that teachers in the UK can search pupils if they feel they need to. They can even use reasonable force to recover items such as knives, although many teachers do not wish to do this for fear of their own safety. However, at the very least, a request should have been made to search Mohammed Khan, and if he refused, as he inevitably would, he should have been kicked off school grounds. When he finished his statement, he returned to classes. Both Harvey and Khan entered the same form room at around 10:35 a.m, and pupils reported there was further interaction between the pair, and this was talking as well as pushing and shoving. These same pupils would later state they believed this was good-natured and just a bit of banter, but I don't believe this. I think this was Khan continuing to try and get a rise out of Harvey so he could attack him. The pair then began a science class together at 11:10 a.m. It was here that Khan ramped things up, squaring up to Harvey. Harvey asked to leave and was heard to tell other people that he believed that something was about to happen. Harvey told the teacher that he was upset as Khan had rubbed his fists up and down his chest, and he asked to be placed in the school's isolation room. Harvey told the teacher overseeing the isolation room that Khan had been making motions of taking something out of his trouser pocket, although he hadn't actually seen a knife, but he feared he was armed. However, nothing was done. At 12:10 p.m, the lunch break began. Harvey Willgoose left the isolation room and walked across the courtyard to the cafeteria. Mohammed Khan was already there, talking to another pupil, who later testified that the conversation was about Harvey and how Khan was mad at him. Khan then began talking about a knife. This pupil put two and two together and told Khan to hand over the weapon before he did something stupid. However, before anyone could be alerted, Khan spotted Harvey walking through the courtyard. He got up and walked outside towards him. The CCTV in the courtyard recorded the next few moments, capturing forever the murder of a 15-year-old child, which was witnessed by approximately 15 other pupils. Harvey Willgoose and Mohammed Khan were face to face in the courtyard, Harvey with his back to the camera and Khan facing it. Harvey placed his hand on Khan's right arm, telling him not to try anything or he would get a beating. This, I think, was Harvey realising in that moment that he was in danger, and he deliberately grabbed Khan's right arm to stop him from pulling out a blade. However, Mohammed Khan was determined. At 12:17 p.m, he took out the hunting knife with his left hand, shook his arm free of Harvey's grip, and switched the blade to his right hand, before plunging it with all of his might into Harvey's chest. The blow was delivered with such force that the knife went through one of Harvey's ribs, straight into his heart. Harvey then backed off, and Khan moved towards him and stabbed him again in the chest. The pair then separated, and Khan again advanced, waving the knife, and apparently dancing whilst he did so. 49 seconds after being stabbed, Harvey Willgoose collapsed and quickly slipped into unconsciousness. Mohammed Khan then went back into the cafeteria, holding the blood-stained knife, whilst pupils ran in fear and panic. As I said earlier, there were considerable failings of the staff at the school, but the whole needs to be distinguished from individuals, as there were several teachers who stepped in to try and shield other children from harm. One of these was Caroline who heard child screams and came running to the cafeteria. Here, she was confronted by Mohammed Khan, holding the knife. She didn't know at that point that Harvey had been stabbed. She later testified, quote, "When I turned around, there was a boy wearing a school uniform and a thin sort of waterproof jacket, and in his right hand he had a knife, which was more black than silver. He had a stance that was sort of quite open with his arms, and the knife was very visible." Caroline was then joined by another teacher, Rachel Hobkirk, who both placed themselves between the knifeman and the children. Caroline continued, quote, "He was waving the knife, but appeared to be saying, 'I'm not going to hurt anyone.' So I said to him, 'Just put the knife down,' and he waved it more. Rachel said, 'Just put the knife down,' and I believe we said that to him several times." They were then joined by the deputy head teacher, Morgan Davis, who approached Khan and held out his hand, asking for the knife. Khan said to him, quote, "You know I can't control it," before handing over the weapon. He was then frog-marched into an office, and an ambulance and the police were called. Whilst waiting for them, Mohammed Khan said that he'd stabbed Harvey, quote, once or twice, as well as saying, "I'm not right in the head. My mum doesn't look after me right." Whilst teachers tended to the terrified pupils in the cafeteria, others rushed to Harvey, including Caroline Willgoose, who stated, quote, "I opened the doors. I could see there was a lot of blood in the courtyard." Harvey was unconscious, surrounded by pupils and teachers who were trying to stem the bleeding from the stab wounds in his chest. The police arrived and arrested Mohammed Khan on suspicion of attempted murder. However, this was soon upgraded to murder, as upon his arrival at Sheffield Children's Hospital at 1:24 p.m, an hour after the stabbing, Harvey Willgoose was pronounced dead. Harvey's killer, Mohammed Khan, was taken to custody, and his lies began with him attempting to portray Harvey as a monster and him, the innocent victim, forced to act in the moment. He told detectives he heard that Harvey regularly carried knives, that he himself had carried a knife for self-protection due to fear of being attacked by Harvey and others in the school. In the courtyard, Khan said that Harvey had made a gesture as if he was reaching for a weapon, and so he struck first. It was kill or be killed. Police didn't believe a word of it. They had footage of the murder itself, showing that Harvey posed no threat to Khan, and it was clear that he'd made no aggressive gestures in the seconds before he was attacked. The police also analysed Mohammed Khan's phone, and this unlocked the internal world of a disturbed teenager, with them finding picture after picture, video after video, and internet search after internet search, exposing this monster's obsession with weapons and violence. On the 5th of February 2025, 2 days after the stabbing, Mohammed Khan was charged with the murder of Harvey Willgoose. He appeared at Sheffield Youth Court later that day and was remanded to await his fate in Crown Court. Mohammed Khan's legal strategy was obvious early on. There was no denying that he'd killed Harvey Willgoose, but he was not a warped, violent, obsessed teenager who'd murdered a school friend over some petty argument. No, he was a poor, abused boy who'd been racially abused for years and had simply snapped. On this basis, he offered to plead guilty to manslaughter. Had this been accepted, given his age, he would likely have been given a sentence which meant that he was out of prison by the time he turned 20. The Crown Prosecution Service rejected this plea. They were confident they had a solid case, which showed that the killing of Harvey was premeditated and that Khan was fundamentally a dangerous and evil human being. So his murder trial began at Sheffield Crown Court on the 1st of July 2025. The defence continued to perpetuate the lie that Mohammed Khan had not meant to hurt anyone and had simply lashed out in fear. The defence stated, quote, "Mr. Khan accepts what he did that day. He accepts responsibility for the tragic and lasting consequences of his actions. That is why he's pleaded guilty to manslaughter. Mr. Khan did not set out to kill or seriously hurt anyone." The defence says Mr. Khan's actions that day were the end result of a long period of bullying, poor treatment and violence, things that built one upon another until he lost control and did tragically what we've all seen. The defence claimed that Mohammed Khan was constantly at threat and subject to continuous racial abuse. The thing is, no one testified to this. All the claims came from Khan, so it was essentially the trust me bro defence. A written statement that Khan had given to the police was entered into evidence, and it read, quote, "Obviously, all these threats have been made to me previously, and at that moment I thought he was going to use a weapon or knife against me. Without thinking and instinctively, I pulled out the knife I had in my pocket and thrust it towards Harvey. I did this in self-defence. It was not my intention to cause him serious harm. At that moment, I felt it was me or him. I had to protect myself." Khan gave evidence and repeated his bullshit on the stand, and whilst Harvey's grieving family looked on, he tried to portray this murdered child as a violent bully, someone who essentially got what they deserved. Mohammed Khan said that he'd bought the knife weeks before the murder, purchasing it online, and had picked this particular one, quote, "because it was a scary knife. Someone would try and attack me, and I would pull it out, and they wouldn't try and attack me." Khan claimed that the pictures he'd taken of himself with knives, some of which he'd uploaded online, were not a reflection of his fixation with weapons, but him trying to ward off the bullies by showing how hard he was. The prosecution questioned Khan, highlighting what actually happened on the day of the murder, with one exchange going as follows, with the Crown's barrister stating, quote, had you tried to provoke him? Khan responded no. The prosecutor asked, had you tried to wind him up earlier in the day? No, it was the other way around, came the response. Khan was then asked, were you trying to get Harvey to do something to you so you could let out your anger? Again, Khan replied no. The prosecution expertly outlined all of the evidence: Mohammed Khan's history of violence, his obsession with weapons, including bringing them to school grounds, the argument that led to this tragic incident, but most importantly, the CCTV footage, the footage that showed the murder of Harvey Willgoose, which showed that he had posed no threat to Khan, who after stabbing him was apparently dancing. On the 8th of August 2025, after 14 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a majority verdict of 11-1, finding Mohammed Khan guilty of the murder of Harvey Willgoose. On the 22nd of October 2025, Khan was back in court before Mrs. Justice Ellen Bogan for sentencing. Up to this point, because of his age, Khan's name was not known and his image had not been published, but the judge lifted this anonymity order and Khan's details were splashed across every newspaper up and down the country. I'll play part of the sentencing remarks as the hearing was filmed. A link to the full thing will be below.
The Youth Justice Team reports that you are known as being well-mannered and well-liked. You have been commended for your good behaviour and twice awarded the title Unit Champion. You enjoy enhanced incentives and earned privileges status, having received 52 positive comments for your engagement, your encouragement of peers to follow instruction, your assistance to staff, and your mature attitude to conflict. You are working in a trusted position, which is said to highlight your character and proactive approach, and have indicated a desire to work towards gaining GCSEs and, ultimately, a professional qualification. I commend you for all of that, and I hope that you will continue to build on the efforts which you have clearly been making towards rehabilitation. Taking account of all of the aggravating and mitigating factors to which I have referred, and the need to impose the shortest minimum term which is consistent with your welfare and necessary rehabilitation, I consider that the appropriate minimum term in your case is one of 16 years, from which the time which you have already spent on remand will be deducted, as I shall explain shortly.
So, to clarify, for the murder of Harvey Willgoose, Mohammed Khan was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum tariff of 16 years. Time he'd spent in custody was taken off his total, so from the day of sentence, he would have to serve 15 years and 106 days before he could apply for parole. This puts the precise date that Khan can make an application for release at the 5th of February 2041, when he'd be just 31 years old, likely be decades ahead of him, a chance for a life, a family, all things he robbed Harvey of. The stoicism and bravery of Harvey's family I'll cover more extensively in the next section, but I want to play words delivered by Sophie, Harvey's sister, outside the court, on behalf of the family.
On the 3rd of February, we didn't just lose Harvey, we lost part of ourselves. Our lives changed forever that day. Harvey was full of life, a warm, funny, caring boy who had a unique ability to bring people together. His presence lit up every room. He made people feel seen, heard and valued. He was deeply loved by his family, cherished by his friends and respected by all who knew him. This tragedy has not only devastated our family but has rippled across the country. People everywhere continue to grieve the loss of our beautiful boy. We know many have been traumatised, some witnessed the unthinkable, others held Harvey as he took his last breaths. To them, we send our deepest love and strength. In Harvey's memory, we will continue to speak out. We will raise awareness about the devastating impact of knife crime and campaign for safer schools, stronger communities and a better, safer future for not just our children but us all. Thank you.
The people of Sheffield shared in the grief of Harvey's parents. They were devastated. Their 15-year-old boy went to school and never came home. On the 8th of February 2025, hundreds of people joined Harvey's parents in a march before the home game between Sheffield United, Harvey's favourite team, and Portsmouth FC. During the 15th minute of the match, a round of applause broke out, with the fans shouting Harvey's name, whilst his face appeared on the big screen. Harvey Willgoose was laid to rest on the 21st of February 2025, with the service being held at Sheffield Cathedral. Hundreds attended the service, whilst hundreds more stood outside, watching on a big screen. Some mourners wore t-shirts with pictures of Harvey's face and anti-knife crime slogans. Mourners applauded as Harvey's coffin, draped in Sheffield United colours, was carried out before being taken to a private cremation service. Harvey's family released a statement where they said they were, quote, "utterly heartbroken. Our lives are devastated and will never be the same again. We have lost a beloved son, brother, grandson, cousin, nephew, and most importantly, a best friend to all. Harvey will be forever known for being a caring, loving, and funny young man." Caroline has made it clear who she feels is at fault for the death of her son, All Saints Catholic High School. She has publicly stated that she believes they failed Harvey by not acting on a myriad of red flags in the days and weeks before his death. It was reported last month that a child safeguarding review will be conducted to examine the circumstances of Harvey's murder and to establish if it was preventable. I can answer that now. Yes, it was. I have a horrible feeling the final report will show an even more astonishing level of negligence than I've outlined in this video. But rather than crumbling, Harvey's parents, Caroline and Mark, threw themselves into trying to save other families from the grief they're going through. Since Harvey's death in February, they've been campaigning against knife crime. They're planning to open a youth club in Sheffield, getting children off the streets and giving them a safe place to go. They intend to call it Harvey's Club. Central to their campaign has been advocating for knife archers, walk-through metal detectors, to be installed in every school up and down the country, and this news story shows the success they've achieved.
Come on through, morning, Izzy.
Morning. It's a sight more commonly associated with airport security. But this morning in Penistone, 2,000 students got to experience a knife arch. It's part of a wider initiative about the dangers of knife crime.
South Yorkshire ranks as the 4th highest in the country for knife crime offences. Last year, 5 people were killed as a result of being stabbed. And between 2022 and 2024, there were more than 100 cases of children bringing knives into schools.
Penistone Grammar School invited police in after the death of Harvey Willgoose. The 15-year-old was fatally stabbed at school in Sheffield last month. His mother Caroline would like to see knife archers made a permanent feature in all schools and colleges. She's delighted by today's event.
Absolutely amazing, and I just hope that other schools follow an example, and I know it goes a lot deeper than that, but let's keep our children safe in schools, number one. Everybody's been hurt by all this because everybody's kids go to school and should go to school, and kids need to be safe, and I think that's why everybody's jumping on board, and it means something to everybody. People's got grandkids, people's got kids in schools, and hopefully we're going to get there.
The respect I have for Caroline and Mark is immeasurable. To turn their tragedy into a campaign to help others, the strength of their character reinforces the type of young man that Harvey was and could have been. With parents like these, he would have had a bright future. However, this photo breaks my heart. 2 grieving parents standing in front of a single metal detector. The reason why is because I hate the fact that in the aftermath of tragedies like this, it's up to the grieving parents to fight, to raise money to try and spread awareness. I personally feel that pots of money should be thrown at these people. It would be nice if millionaires or billionaires stepped up and funded these worthy causes, using a fraction of their immense wealth for anyone but themselves. These brave people should not have to fight alone. I've had a look, and I cannot find a specific funding page for their work, but I imagine that one will appear. When it does, I'll post it on the channel so that we as a community can help. This is not something I'm asking you guys to do without doing it myself. The first donation will come from me. I also want to ask you to keep Harvey's family in your thoughts. When the TV cameras have gone and the story falls from the front page, they're still there, trying to put their lives back together. And now they're approaching their first Christmas without their son, brother, grandson, best friend. I've said it many times, but the most important element of this channel is respect for the victims' families and remembering those who are no longer with us. I want you all to remember the name Harvey Willgoose, and the fact that his short life began on the 29th of November 2009, and he entered heaven on the 3rd of February 2025, aged just 15 years old. Rest in eternal peace, little buddy. Mohammed Khan is, as I said during this video, a little thug, but the monster that he's become is born out of his own trauma in his upbringing, which was clearly appalling. Being left in the care of a mother with serious mental health issues and an absent father who used the family as a punching bag when he was around. Ultimately, responsibility for who he became starts here, and as with so many cases I've covered, is underpinned by piss-poor parenting. This environment would have led to Khan growing up with normalised views of violence, but also likely incredibly low self-esteem. He felt powerless, inferior, and this is tragic, but this is the background of so many children who grow up to be perfectly productive members of society and never hurt anyone. But Khan decided that violence was a way to make himself feel more powerful, to make himself feel more like a man. He wanted others to fear him. He had been a victim, and now he wanted others to suffer. I showed this picture before and said it's worth 1,000 words. I think this gives an indicator that Khan was likely hanging around with other people, like him, who thought they were hard men. I suspect that Mohammed Khan was part of a gang, and this would have made his distorted views even worse. These are Muppets who glorify violence. They're unable to tell the difference between fear and respect, nor do they care. I suspect that Khan was involved in criminal activity, potentially selling drugs. This would fill in another gap in this case, where he got the money from to buy all of his weapons. This may have come from his parents, but considering they apparently didn't even have the cash to feed the family, I find this unlikely. One of the most common traits of gangs is this pathetic, almost childlike response to any slight. These fucking morons will stab each other because of someone stepping into their postcode, because of some sad spat on social media. Human life is cheap in these circles. And this characterises Mohammed Khan perfectly, a sad little boy who felt disrespected by Harvey Willgoose due to some pathetic online argument, and in his twisted mind, Harvey deserved to die. He spent the hours before the murder trying to get a rise out of Harvey. He wanted any excuse to plunge the knife into him, likely living out fantasies of violence which he'd had for many years. Then, when he was caught, Mohammed Khan played the poor me card. I've been bullied, everyone is against me. I said earlier that the racial element of this case is bullshit, and I want to expand on that a bit more. I believe that potentially Mohammed Khan was racially abused during his life, and that's terrible. No one should have to go through that, but it's nothing to do with this case. Even if he had been racially abused before, it clearly wasn't by Harvey, so there's no link whatsoever between these two things. Khan killed Harvey because he's a violent bully who was butthurt about a simple argument. Luckily, the court saw through his bullshit. I imagine this shitbag is peacocking about what he did. Look how hard I am. What a big man I am. Maybe one day he'll wake up, feel guilty, and resolve to live an offence-free life, spending the rest of his days trying to make up for what he's done. Or eventually, he'll come out and go back to the streets, surrounding himself with people who don't see him as a killer, but as a gangster. I pray for the former outcome, but fear the latter. So what are your thoughts on this case? If you like the content, then consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button. You can also send a one-off donation to support the channel via the thanks button. Please like, share and subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.